Hi, I'm John from Centrelink Support Hub. Today we're talking about something that affects a huge number of Australian retirees right now, and that's the age pension asset and income thresholds that changed on the 1st of July 2026. If your pension has gone up, gone down, stopped altogether, or you're wondering whether you might now qualify for some help you didn't have before, stick with me because I'm going to walk you through exactly what changed using the real figures published by Services Australia, and I'll explain a card that a lot of people don't even realize they might be eligible for. Before we get started, a quick note. This video is general information only, not personal financial advice. Everyone's situation is different, so please use this as a starting point and confirm your own circumstances with Services Australia or a qualified financial advisor. All right, let's get into it. So why do these numbers change every year? It comes down to something called indexation. The government reviews age pension payments and the asset and income limits that decide who gets them several times a year based on movements in the cost of living. Specifically, the Consumer Price Index, along with a measure called the Pensioner and Beneficiary Living Cost Index, and Male Total Average Weekly Earnings. These reviews happen at different times of the year for different parts of the system. The lower limits, which decide who gets the full age pension, are reviewed every 1st of July. The upper limits, which decide who can still get a part pension, are reviewed twice a year in March and September. This might sound a little complicated, but the simple takeaway is this. These numbers are not fixed. They move with the cost of living, and the government publishes updated figures on the Services Australia website every time they change. That's also why, if you're watching this video some months after I've recorded it, I always recommend double-checking the current figures on the official Services Australia site, because by the time you're watching, they may have shifted again. Now let's talk about what actually changed from the 1st of July 2026 and how it affects singles and couples differently, because the rules are genuinely not the same for each group. Let's start with the assets test, because this is where most of the recent changes are being felt. The assets test looks at what you and your partner, if you have one, own. This includes things like savings in the bank, shares, managed funds, superannuation, once you're of pension age, investment properties, and the value of things like cars, caravans, and household contents above a certain amount. It does not include the value of the home you live in, if you own it, which is a really important distinction we'll come back to. From the 1st of July 2026 running through to the 19th of September 2026, here is what the assets test looks like. If you're single and you own your home, you can have assessable assets up to $333,000 and still receive the full age pension. If your assets go above that amount, your pension doesn't stop straight away, it reduces gradually. You can still receive a part pension right up until your assets reach $733,500. Once you're above that point, the pension cuts off completely. If you're single and you don't own your home, the numbers are higher because the government recognizes that non-homeowners need to cover their own housing costs, whether that's rent or something similar. A single non-homeowner can have assets up to $600,000 for the full pension, and the part pension continues up until $1,500,000. For couples, the figures are based on your combined assets, not each person individually. So if you're a couple who owns your home together, your combined assessable assets can be up to $499,000 for the full pension, and a part pension remains available up to $1,102,500 combined. If you're a couple who doesn't own a home, those figures rise to $766,000 for the full pension and $1,369,500 for the part pension cutoff. Now, how does the part pension actually get calculated once you're above the full pension threshold? Services Australia uses a simple formula. For every $1,000 your assessable assets sit above the full pension limit, your fortnightly pension reduces by $3. So the further above the threshold you are, the more your pension tapers down, until eventually it reaches zero at the cutoff point I just mentioned. Let's move on to the income test, because Centrelink actually runs both tests, the assets test and the income test, side by side, and pays you whichever result gives you the lower amount. This catches some people out, because they assume passing one test means they're fine, when really both need to be considered. For the income test, from the 1st of July 2026 to the 19th of September 2026, if you're single, you can earn up to $226 a fortnight and still receive the full pension. That works out to roughly $5,876 a year. Above that amount, your pension reduces at a rate of 50 cents for every dollar you earn over the threshold, right up until your income reaches $2,627.80 a fortnight, which is around $68,323 a year. Beyond that point, the pension cuts off entirely under the income test. For couples, it's based on your combined income. You can earn up to $396 a fortnight combined for the full pension, which is around $10,296 a year. The part pension remains available until your combined income reaches $4,016.80 a fortnight, or roughly $104,437 a year. One thing worth mentioning here, because it genuinely helps a lot of pensioners who are still working part-time, is the work bonus. If you or your partner are still earning money from employment, the first $300 per person per fortnight is not counted in the income test at all. That adds up to $11,800 a year per person that you can earn from work without it affecting your pension under the income test. This is separate from any unused work bonus you might have built up over time, which can also offset future income. Now, here's where I want to spend some real time, because this is genuinely the part of the topic that most people miss, and it directly relates to the title of this video. If your assets have gone up, and you've now lost your age pension, or moved from a full pension to a part pension, or from a part pension to nothing at all, that doesn't necessarily mean you've lost access to help with your health costs. There's a completely separate card called the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card, often shortened to CSHC, and it works very differently to the age pension. The most important thing to understand about the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card is that it has no assets test whatsoever. Services Australia only looks at your income when deciding if you qualify. This means someone could have a substantial amount in savings, shares, or other assets, well above the age pension asset limits we just went through, and still be eligible for this card, as long as their income sits under the threshold. So what are those income thresholds? Based on the current published figures from Services Australia, if you're single, your adjusted taxable income needs to be under $101,105 a year. If you're a couple, your combined adjusted taxable income needs to be under $161,768 a year. And if you're a couple who is separated due to illness, respite care, or one of you is in prison, the combined threshold is $202,210 a year. If you have a dependent child in your care, you can add $639.60 to whichever threshold applies to you for each child. These income limits are reviewed once a year on the 20th of September in line with the Consumer Price Index, so they're a little more stable throughout the year than the age pension thresholds, which move more frequently. Now, what does adjusted taxable income actually include? It's based on your taxable income, so your gross income from wages, business income, or investments, minus any allowable deductions, plus certain other amounts the tax office adds back in, like reportable superannuation contributions or reportable fringe benefits, if those apply to you. On top of that, if you have an account-based income stream, like an account-based pension from your superannuation, Services Australia applies something called Deeming to work out an assumed income from that and adds it to your adjusted taxable income for the purposes of this test. Let's talk about Deeming for a moment, because it comes up in both the age pension income test and the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card income test, and it genuinely confuses a lot of people. Deeming is the government's standard assumption about how much income your financial assets are earning, rather than looking at what they're actually earning in real life. The idea is that it keeps things simple and consistent, rather than Centrelink having to individually assess the actual return on every bank account, term deposit, and share portfolio in the country. Under the current deeming rates, the first portion of your financial assets is deemed to earn a lower rate of 1.25%. For a single person, that lower rate applies to the first $64,200 of your financial assets. For a couple, combined, it applies to the first $106,200. Anything above those amounts is deemed to earn a higher rate of 3.25%. So if your financial assets are worth more than the lower threshold, part of your money is deemed at 1.25% and the remainder is deemed at 3.25%, and those two amounts are added together to work out your deemed income. Here's why this matters in practice. Let's say you have a term deposit that's actually only earning you 3% interest, but because of how deeming works, and depending on your total financial asset balance, Centrelink might assess you as earning more than that if a larger portion of your assets falls into the higher deeming band. This can catch people out because they look at their real bank statements and think their income is lower than what Centrelink has assessed, when in reality it's the deemed amount, not the actual amount, that's being used for the test. Let's go through a few real-world style examples now, using the actual published thresholds, just to make this more concrete. Example 1. Imagine a single retiree who owns their home outright. They have $200,000 in superannuation and savings combined, and no other significant assets. Since $200,000 is well under the $333,000 full pension threshold for a single homeowner, and assuming their income is also under the $226 a fortnight threshold, once deeming is applied, they would likely be eligible for the full age pension, along with the pensioner concession card that comes with it. Example 2. Now, imagine a single retiree who owns their home but has $450,000 in savings and investments. That's above the $333,000 full pension threshold, but still well under the $733,500 cutoff point. This person would likely be eligible for a part-age pension, with the amount reducing based on how far above $333,000 their assets sit, at the rate of $3 a fortnight for every $1,000 over that limit. Example 3, and this is the one most relevant to today's topic. Imagine a single retiree who owns their home outright and has $800,000 in savings, shares, and superannuation combined. That's above the $733,500 part pension cutoff point. So under the assets test, this person would not receive any age pension at all. However, because the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card has no assets test, this same person could still apply for that card. And if their adjusted taxable income, including any deemed income from those investments, comes in under $101,105 a year, they could be granted the card, giving them access to cheaper prescription medicines and other concessions, even though they're not receiving any pension payment at all. This is exactly the scenario that catches so many people off guard. They assume that losing the age pension means losing every form of government support, when in reality, the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card was specifically designed for people in exactly this position: self-funded retirees or those with assets above the pension thresholds who still want some help with health costs. Let's talk about what practical steps you can actually take if any of this applies to you. The first thing I'd recommend is logging into your MyGov account and making sure it's linked to Centrelink. From there, you can use the Payment and Service Finder tool on the Services Australia website to check the current thresholds and get an indication of what you might be eligible for based on your own income and assets. This is genuinely useful because, as I mentioned earlier, these figures do change periodically, so checking the live tool gives you the most accurate picture at the time you're looking. Second, if your age pension has recently stopped or reduced because your assets or income moved above the relevant threshold, it is worth specifically applying for the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card. I want to stress this because it does not happen automatically. Even if you meet the income test, Services Australia will not issue you this card unless you actively apply for it through your MyGov account. So if you've lost your pension and haven't looked into this separately, that's genuinely worth doing. Third, if you'd prefer to speak to someone directly rather than navigating the online system, you can call the Centrelink Older Australians line on 132 300. That's 132300. This line operates Monday to Friday from 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, and it's specifically set up to help with the age pension, the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card, and the Pensioner Concession Card. Fourth, Services Australia also runs something called the Financial Information Service, often referred to as FIS. This is a genuinely free service where trained officers can help you understand how different financial decisions might affect your pension or concession card eligibility. You access this through the same 132 300 number. You simply let them know when you call that you'd like to speak to a financial information service officer. Now let's clear up a couple of things that people commonly get wrong, because I think this will save some of you a lot of confusion. The first misunderstanding is thinking the Pensioner Concession Card and the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card are the same thing, or that they work the same way. They don't. The Pensioner Concession Card comes automatically when you're receiving the age pension. You don't need to apply for it separately. The Commonwealth Seniors Health Card, on the other hand, is a completely separate card, designed for people who are of age pension age, but who are not receiving the age pension, usually because their assets or income are above the pension thresholds. The two cards also offer somewhat different concessions, so it's worth understanding which one actually applies to your situation, rather than assuming they're interchangeable. The second misunderstanding is around mortgages. Some people believe that if they have a mortgage on their home, this reduces the value of their other accessible assets, like shares or savings, for the purposes of the pension or the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card income test. This isn't correct. A mortgage on your principal home does not reduce the deemed value of separate financial assets. Your home itself isn't counted as an accessible asset if you own it, mortgage or not, but that's different from saying the mortgage offsets your other investments. It doesn't. A related point worth mentioning is around gifting. Some people consider giving away some of their assets to family members, thinking this will help them qualify for a higher pension or for the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card. There are limits here that are important to know. You can gift up to $10,000 in a single financial year or up to $30,000 over a rolling 5-year period without it affecting your assets test. However, if you gift more than these amounts, the excess is still counted as what's called a deprived asset, and Centrelink continues to assess it as if you still owned it for 5 years from the date of the gift. So gifting beyond these limits doesn't actually reduce your accessible assets in the way some people expect. To bring this all together, here's what I'd like you to take away from this video. From the 1st of July 2026, the age pension assets and income thresholds have moved, and depending on your situation, this may have increased, reduced, or completely stopped your pension payment. If you're a single homeowner, the full pension threshold now sits at $333,000 in assets, with a part pension available up to $733,500. For couples who own their home, those figures are $499,000 and $1,102,500 combined. Non-homeowners have higher thresholds again, reflecting the cost of housing they need to cover themselves. But even if your assets now place you above these limits and your age pension has stopped, it's genuinely worth checking your eligibility for the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card, since it uses an income test only with no assets test at all. The current thresholds are $101,105 for singles and $161,768 for couples combined. This card can give you access to cheaper medicines under the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme and other concessions, even without receiving a pension payment. If any of this applies to you, my genuine suggestion is to check the Payment and Service Finder tool on the Services Australia website. Apply for the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card through MyGov if you think you might be eligible, and if you'd rather talk it through with a person, call the Centrelink Older Australians line on 132 300 and ask to speak with a financial information service officer if you want help understanding how this all applies to your specific circumstances. I hope this has helped make sense of what's actually changed, and more importantly, what options might still be available to you, even if your pension situation has shifted. If you found this useful, subscribing to Centrelink Support Hub helps more seniors find clear, accurate information like this. Thanks so much for watching. I'm John, and I'll see you in the next video. Sources for the description box: Services Australia, Assets Test for Age Pension, servicesaustralia.gov.au/assets, -test for -age -pension. Services Australia, Income Test for Age Pension, servicesaustralia.gov.au/income-test, for -age -pension. Services Australia, Income Test for Commonwealth Seniors Health Card, servicesaustralia.gov.au/income-test for Commonwealth-Seniors Health Card, Services Australia Deeming, servicesaustralia.gov.au/deeming, Services Australia Payment and Service Finder, servicesaustralia.gov.au/payment- and -service -finder. Figures shown are those effective from the 1st of July 2026 to the 19th of September 2026 for the age pension, and the current Commonwealth Seniors Health Card thresholds reviewed as of the 20th of September in the prior year. Please verify current figures on the Services Australia website before relying on them, as thresholds are updated periodically.